Investigators call the MGM Grand a disaster waiting to happen. Rooms without smoke detectors or sprinkler systems, poorly designed stairwells and elevator shafts that suck deadly smoke into fire escapes. 83 people die that day, and 2 more die later in the hospital. It is the second most deadly fire in American history.
Fire Control Battalion 2, stand by for dispatch. We have a report of a fire in the building in the Deli of the MGM. It's entrance number 2.
The MGM, like most Las Vegas hotels, didn't meet fire standards of the day.
We have no enforcement power over. We have suggestive powers over. We have recommendation powers. But, you know, to actually, to accomplish what we want to accomplish, we don't have the authority.
Fire investigator Mike Patterson.
If there had been sprinklers in there, we'd have had some water damage pour down in that Deli area, and that would have been it. That would have been it. That's as far as it would have gone. I feel personally that all we would have been doing at this particular hotel was vacuuming up water rather than putting out fire.
And the fire alarm system was knocked out.
As we started walking down the hallways, most of the people were still unaware of what was going on. No alarms were going off. No personnel in the hotel made any effort where we were to notify anybody. No one was knocking on the doors.
Nothing was happening in the hotel. No alarms, no nothing. That was very quiet, very peaceful. But outside was a lot of noise.
We went right for the stairwell, opened the door, and there was a wall of smoke right there. And we stopped cold and thought, oh my God, the fire exits are filled with smoke. Because those who went in just a few minutes earlier into the fire well when there wasn't smoke up at that level got trapped in the stairwells. The doors all self-locked behind them and they couldn't get out.
Nevada Governor Robert List.
It's just a burned out devastation, and it turns your stomach.
The governor set up a special fire safety commission to discuss strengthening fire safety codes.
Completely off to the property. Off to the property, gentlemen.
Tensions were high. The pressure was on the hotel's owners to come up with answers. Just days after the fire, a controversy erupted.
Owners of the MGM Grand were told even before the hotel was built that plans for fire safety should be improved. Sunday, the hotel's top management denied that, but this man, Las Vegas fire captain Carl Lowe, told NBC News he recommended improvements in 1972 during a meeting with the architects of the hotel.
We went ahead and made recommendations, whether it be verbal with those architects sitting with us at the table or in writing.
Why do you suppose the hotel didn't change?
I have no idea.
Why wasn't this done?
I never heard of his request.
The MGM fire became a unique disaster in legal terms. Hundreds of lawyers descended on Las Vegas, resulting in many multi-million-dollar personal injury claims, counterclaims, cross-claims, and defenses. Many of the cases were consolidated into what was, at the time, the first, largest, and most complex mass disaster lawsuit in history. MGM and over 80 product manufacturers and suppliers were sued. Eventually, over 1,000 claims were settled for a total of $223 million.
On the morning of November 21st, 1980, this casino's luck ran out.
In Las Vegas this morning, a huge fire is raging out of control at the MGM Grand Hotel.
The blaze was one of the worst hotel fires in U.S. history. 85 guests and employees died, and another 600 were injured. What chain of events caused this fire and turned the glittering casino into a smoldering cavern? Witnesses said the fire began next to the casino in the small restaurant called the Deli. It was started by the electrical connection to a little compressor that cooled a pie rack. Hot smoke and flames from the deli ignited the plastic on the ceiling of the casino. Waves of fire rolled through the hotel. The fire destroyed the casino and killed 7 people there. What could have fueled the deadly blaze? One investigator knew that the answer lay in the ashes of the Deli, and he targeted 2 major suspects. 7 people died when flames gutted the first floor. But as firefighters evacuated the top floors of the MGM Grand Hotel, they found 65 more victims. No alarms rang on the upper floors of the MGM, and many guests only learned of the fire when fire trucks arrived. By then, people were trapped.
We have a report of a fire in the building.
On the 22nd or 23rd floor, we came to the elevator lobby, and at one point there was 5 or 6 bodies just laying there. They were covered with black smoke and soot, and the soot was so thick that if you would pick up an arm, there would be the perfect clean outline of a hand on the carpet. And it was obvious they died there, overcome by smoke, waiting for elevators that never came.
They were getting such high ambient air temperatures that the sensing dampers were closing, shutting down the entire system. And it's my understanding, as a cure for this, maintenance personnel took lag screws and mechanically fastened the dampers open, thereby negating their effect.
The propped open air conditioner, the elevator shafts, and the seismic joints filled the upper hallways with noxious smoke. 22 guests choked on the fumes while struggling to escape. 25 died in rooms, some with no obvious signs of smoke inhalation.
When you go into a room that's absolutely clean, and the people are there under no distress and no panic, and yet they're not alive, well, it's disheartening for one thing, and then, man, you want to know what happened here. I mean, we've got to know what happened here.
What I saw when I came into this room was what appeared to be a surprising lack of smoke. The walls and the ceiling and the floor did not appear to have any noticeable stains. In looking at the guest rooms, I noticed that the air supply came through small grills over the top of the guest room doors. I removed several of these grills and noticed that the air filters behind the grills were tightly packed, literally clogged with heavy black soot particles.
Custer discovered the room's air conditioners had drawn air in from the smoky hallways.
The thick black smoke had been absorbed or filtered out by the air filters, but that wasn't enough to filter out the toxic carbon monoxide and other gases that killed the occupants. They probably had no idea that there was anything toxic. They would have smelled smoke, but they wouldn't have seen smoke.
The invisible poisonous carbon monoxide replaced the oxygen in the victims' blood. Their central nervous system slowly shut down, lulling them into a deadly sleep.
This is truly what would be called an accident, where a huge number of small items all came together at the same time and resulted in a disaster.
Bad luck turned relatively minor defects into a major catastrophe. The flammable deli booths and ceiling tiles, the locking stairway doors, the propped open air conditioner, and the smoke-spreading seismic joints all played a part in the tragedy.
As 3,000 guests wake up to the nightmare of a hotel on fire, panicked people crowd onto their balconies to escape the choking smoke. But Al and Trudy don't have that option.
The handle was broken. There was a maintenance card on it saying, "Door doesn't open." A real revelation to me in the middle of this fire.
Many guests make the fatal error of rushing out of their rooms and into toxic, smoke-filled corridors. Overcome by the fumes, they try to return, but the doors have locked behind them. Many who die are later found right outside their room doors. Smoke from the fire is shooting up the elevator shafts straight to the 18th floor. It is sucked into the hotel's air conditioning system, and fans are blowing the acrid fumes throughout the poorly ventilated upper floors. Stunned victims of the fire can't comprehend how a new luxury hotel could become a death trap.
There were no lights on or anything, no emergency lights that we could see.
How come there's no fire alarm in the MGM? I was on the 12th floor and there's no alarm.
In all, 85 people are dead and hundreds are injured in one of the deadliest hotel fires in U.S. history. But as investigators survey the wreckage, they discover that the tragedy could have been avoided. Fire investigators trace the source of the blaze to faulty wiring in the delicatessen refrigerator. Because of lax fire regulations, most of the MGM was not equipped with water sprinklers. The fire had ample opportunity to rage out of control. And to make matters worse, when the blaze first broke out, a member of the hotel staff switched the fire alarms off, thinking they were triggered by mistake.
The MGM Grand fire ultimately claimed 85 lives, the second most deadly hotel fire in American history. The tragedy sparked a massive reform of fire protection systems, starting in Las Vegas.
You could see people up there 100 yards away, and they were in fear of their lives.
A lot of them had very little clothes or whatever they had with them. Some of them had towels over their face. You could see a lot of them had breath, taken in some smoke. So they were definitely running for their lives.
But the MGM fire was a tragedy that could have been avoided. It was a disaster whose genesis began with flawed engineering and was later compounded by poor maintenance and bad luck. When the MGM opened on the Vegas Strip in 1972, fire codes called for sprinkler systems throughout the 27-story building and T-shaped guest tower. But an exception was made for the MGM's ground floor casino and an adjoining Deli restaurant. Since both were open 24 hours a day, it was decided that any fire that broke out in those areas could be quickly contained. Sometime after the hotel opened, however, the casino's Deli restaurant began closing at midnight. Early on the morning of November 21st, a fire started in an enclosed area of the restaurant that was used for bussing dishes, known as a side station. Investigators built this full-scale reproduction of the side station to trace the movement of the fire and filmed the blaze.
The delicatessen side station had a 2-foot by 2-foot air transfer grill located in its ceiling. As a result of this, the fire could develop in that space undetected and develop to the point that we know as flashover, which makes it much more hazardous.
Flashover is the point at which virtually everything that's flammable within an enclosed area starts to burn. Once the fire reached flashover in the Deli restaurant, it roared into the casino, which was filled with combustible furnishings, 12 tons of glue in the ceiling tiles alone. Meanwhile, a flawed air control system allowed smoke and carbon monoxide to sift upwards toward the top levels of the guest towers.
There were a number of shafts within the building, the elevator shafts, the stair shafts, in addition to the ventilation system. And so it was people actually on the uppermost floors that were subjected to the most severe smoke conditions.
The interior exit stairwells became the most dangerous places of all, escape routes that turned into death traps.
There was smoke coming up some of the stairways, and when people tried to leave the stairways because of the smoke, they found that the doors from the stairway side had been locked for security purposes, and they couldn't get out of the stairways on any floor.
Reports that the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas had a history of fire insurance problems dating back over 7 years before construction on the resort casino was even completed. As Randy Shandeville reports, if those stories prove true, MGM could be faced with overwhelming legal and financial problems.
MGM officials called their hotel the world's biggest and most spectacular hotel casino. But according to the Examiner story, a Las Vegas fire official called the $100 million resort one of the world's greatest fire traps. In fact, before the giant hotel even opened, the Pacific Fire Rating Bureau gave the cement and steel high-rise a fire rating equivalent to that of a wood structure. Another insurance ratings officer, according to the Examiner, was so concerned about fire safety at the MGM Grand that he took photographs of the building under construction and locked them away in a vault for protection. That man, Herman Spieth, in the insurance business for over 30 years, was worried that the steel girders were not properly fireproofed. Many of these safety problems were apparently corrected by MGM, and their insurance premiums were eventually lowered. But on Friday, the day the hotel burned, an investigator for one of MGM's insurers told Channel 2 that his company had warned MGM about its lack of sufficient sprinklers. That investigator asked not to be named. So far, there has been no proof that any of these safety problems contributed to the deaths and injuries that occurred Friday. But if some people did die due to negligence on MGM's part, then the MGM Movie and Hotel Corporation could be overwhelmed by lawsuits. Marvin Lewis Sr., a nationally respected Bay Area lawyer, told Channel 2 today that families of the dead could collect as much as $1 or $2 million per victim in general damages. Those losses would be covered by MGM's insurance companies. But if it's proven that MGM in any way consciously ignored safety warnings, then MGM stands to lose up to hundreds of millions more in punitive damages. Punitive damages, by law, according to Attorney Lewis, cannot be covered by insurance companies.